Hey team, thanks so much for joining us. I got my pen for you here, Aaron. I got it out of the way. Team, it's been brought to my attention that I click my pen as a nervous habit, so I put my pen behind me. Aaron has scolded me about that, so you will not hear any pen clicking. But what you are going to hear today is our guest, Craig Bueller. One of the things that Aaron and I have come up with amongst other shows is this is called 15 Minutes of Fame, kind of a play on Andy Warhol. And what we want to do is bring on a guest, and we just want to talk about something that's important to them, and it's also their area of expertise. Well, Aaron and we wear many hats. We can't cover it all. And one of the things that's become so important now in the youth athletics space is mental mindset. So with that, I'm going to introduce Craig Bueller. Craig, tell us about it. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about who you are and what you are for our audience.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, and thanks, Aaron, for having me. So Craig Bueller, originally from Detroit, Michigan, grew up playing pretty much every sport outside of ice hockey, ironically, being from Michigan. But specifically, chose golf and tennis, so more individual sports. Was never going to take it to a high level in the NCAA, but I really appreciate the mental aspect of an individual sport. So being by yourself, having really no teammate on the court or golf course, I thought it was super interesting and different from team sports. And that's what grew my interest in psychology, sports psychology. So I studied at the University of Michigan, realized that sports psychology was in fact a real field. Sports psychologists were, it's a good profession. And I just really wanted to tie in my love of sports and performance with the idea of helping people get better as performers and as humans. So after Michigan, went to the University of Illinois, Chicago, did a 2 years master's program in sports psychology and had a really nice experience there. I was able to work with Division I women's soccer and women's tennis teams, as well as the Chicago Hounds, which is professional Major League Rugby. So that was a new sport to me. And that interest led to wanting to explore the UK. So I moved to England last September, was teaching sports psychology at a sports business school here. And now I'm currently working in educational consulting, helping English-based students and athletes understand the university landscape system in the United States and also help them get recruited. So I'm really interested in now cultural transition, navigating the demands of going from another country to the NCAA, and really helping athletes explore the mindsets required for them to succeed, to flourish, and to have a really enjoyable experience, not only in their sport, but just their overall life. So that's my current focus. Met up with Thomas and Aaron as they're trying to really be a proponent for leadership and character development. I felt like our values aligned, and just excited to help spread awareness as to how we can proactively think about mental fitness, thinking about flexible mindsets, and helping athletes thrive in and out of sport.
Awesome. Before we get off, when we're off camera, Aaron, we have to tell Craig about how he met one of his colleagues. I believe it was Sanji from. Is that her name?
No.
Anyway, we'll talk about it after. We'll talk about it afterwards, Craig. I meant to bring that up before we jumped on the camera, jumped on the show. One of the things, Craig, that when Aaron and I first met, she's like, Thomas, all you focus on is bigger, faster, stronger. And I was like, yeah, that's my job. And she's like, well, what about the completion of the athlete, who they are off the field, who they are in the mental performance, and who they are in the ups and the downs? And I was like, well, that's not my job. And she goes, it should be. And it gave me pause. And that's, one of the reasons why we reached out to you, is because this is your area of expertise. What advice would you give to the audience about how does an athlete identify who they are outside of the position that they play and the sport that they play?
Yeah, good question, Thomas. Again, identity's massive. Unfortunately, when we specialize in one sport, one area of focus, we tend to foreclose our identity and strictly, label ourselves as just this performer in this one sport. Which can help, initially with focusing on just being the best at your performance, being the best at your craft. But over the time, like we know that we change, humans change, the sport's not going to last forever. So there's a little bit of a hesitancy to disclose your whole identity on, or foreclose your whole identity on one aspect of your being, of just being a performer. So it's really important to proactively think about, okay, yes, you're an athlete, but you're also so much more than that. and proactively thinking about, okay, what are your other roles? What are you doing in your community? What are you doing outside of sport? How do you develop different interests? How do you create different challenges to go explore, other strengths and improve upon some areas of weakness, and really thinking about the long-term development of these athletes, because it's so easy just to focus on being the best tennis player, being the best football player,
Right.
thinking about outcomes, how that impacts your identity and the threat of loss. So it's really about establishing a strong sense of stability, and being rooted in, I do play football, like it matters to me. And I'm also more than that. I have different interests, and working with a coach, working with someone like you, Thomas, can proactively, start the process of establishing like a stable sense of self.
Sure. As promised, Craig, the questions are going to start rolling in. We've got this is a question from Miguel. Grew up in New
Let's do it.
Mexico. Now playing soccer at UTEP. Craig, I've always been told I'm
Go
naturally.
Miners.
What's that?
The Miners.
Yes. Go Miners. I've always been told I'm naturally talented and things have always come easy to me. But now I'm at a Division One level where everyone's talented and I'm struggling for the first time. I don't know how to get better because I've never really had to work at it before. How do I shift from relying on natural ability to actually developing growth mindset when I've never needed one?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I think it's nice just to start there, that you're aware of the fact that, yeah, it was nice to be talented and being really, heavily recruited. Now you're playing Division One level, but understanding that everyone else at this level is also really, really good. So it's a kind of treating yourself as you would a friend, with a bit of kindness and warmth, and not being so hard and down on yourself. I think it's really easy for athletes and just humans overall, myself included, to be very critical. That's very instinctive. So it starts with awareness of what your mind's telling you, what you're noticing. Thinking about too with the growth mindset. Okay, well, I am talented, yes, and I'm also, someone who can grow and someone who can challenge myself. So it's identifying what are those kind of micro goals, whether it's today or this week, those shorter time frame goals of, okay, well, it would be a challenge for me today. If I'm in the gym today, where does my focus want to be? Maybe I do a gym session, without my phone, without social media. Maybe I'm doing a different workout, different exercise. So it's thinking about those micro challenges, those achievable challenges, then that could hopefully build a bit of a momentum, a bit more confidence. But ultimately, it starts with how you're treating yourself, and then figuring out those micro challenges to help you expand those personal boundaries.
Awesome. We've got Sarah from Oklahoma. She's a Division II softball player. Craig, I had a major injury last year that took me out for the whole season. I came back physically, but mentally I'm not the same. I'm scared of getting hit by a pitch again. I hold back in competition and I've lost my edge. How do you rebuild resilience after something breaks you? Like, how do I bounce forward when I'm still trying to just bounce back?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not easy. Again, identity with injury, and just injury in general, with the physical comeback, but also the mental comeback, because there's a lot of uncertainty. And of course, your mind's going to want to protect you and think about, okay, well, what if this doesn't work out? What if I do get hit by a pitch? What if I don't make the team? So really, again, starts with recognizing what's showing up for you, what your mind's telling you, and establishing a flexible mindset that allows you to recognize those thoughts, recognize those stories, and the fact that your mind's trying to protect you. Create a little bit of space from those stories, make room for them, and then ultimately think about, okay, well, what matters to me as a softball player, as a human? Like, is it courage? Is it, challenge? Is it connection? And trying to formulate a way that works best for you to recognize those thoughts, and then choose to focus on what matters, whether it is, focusing at the plate, or focusing on a challenge, or living by your values. So again, it's really being able to better notice where your mind takes you, appreciate your mind, show again a bit of kindness and compassion. Your mind's often trying to protect you. So with injuries, okay, it makes sense that your mind would worry about getting hit by a pitch or not returning to the same level of play. And then really kind of realigning your attention on those values, those things you do control. Okay, well, what qualities do I want to represent? What's important now, and going from there.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, they're coming in, Craig. This
Keep
is
them
from a
coming.
mom. This is from a mom. Our son falls apart after every loss. He cries. He shuts down. He says he wants to quit. Quit. A little backstory: he's a freshman in high school, and he has two older siblings that have excelled in athletics. We try to comfort him, but nothing we say helps. How do we teach resilience to our son who's this emotionally affected by failure? Are we being too soft on him?
Hmm. Yeah, another heavy question there. Again, it's going to depend on the person and depend on who this kid is and how his parents, frame pressure and frame expectations. But I think it starts with understanding his personal expectations. What does he want out of his experience, and turning towards, okay, well, maybe my parents expect a lot. Maybe it's my coaches. Maybe it's my siblings who set the bar pretty high. That's great. Can I recognize those expectations and still turn towards, okay, well, what are my standards of performance? Because I don't control the outcome. I control how I show up and what qualities I bring. So similar to the last questions, it's connecting those values, those standards as to, okay, what do I actually care about? What do I want out of this experience? And how can I still pursue something I care about without getting bogged down or dragged down by the fear of loss or the worry of expectation that others or myself might be putting on.
Got it. Another parent question. Monday morning mom. We tell our son to focus on the process, but then my husband and I are the one that are asking, did you win? What was your stats after every game? We're sending mixed messages. We know that. How do we genuinely shift to caring about process when we do care about the outcomes?
Yeah. Yep. Again, yeah, trust the process. Again, it's important, but at the end of the day, like, outcomes do matter. You do need certain scores. You do need certain a level of performance if you want to go after getting recruited. So it's a balance of, yes, outcomes matter, and so does the process. So as parents, it's encouraging those controllable goals, owning the ownables, and really checking in, from a compassionate lens of making sure that the things we do actually control are being executed, and understanding that, yeah, the outcomes matter, but what effect is that having on my child?
Right.
What are the payoffs of bringing up these outcomes versus the costs? And recognizing that sometimes it can be helpful to think about the outcomes, but at the same time, if it's putting too much pressure on your kid, thinking about, okay, how do we change our approach to shift to these actionable process-based goals, and coming from that standpoint.
Awesome. This is an interesting one, and I'm going to answer it before I let Craig answer it. It's kind of tongue in cheek, but there's going to be some seriousness behind it. Craig, our entire family's identity revolves around our daughter's sports career. We schedule everything around her games and her club sports. We talk about it constantly, and honestly, our marriage is held together by her athletic success. We know this is unhealthy, but we don't know how to change it. How do we separate our identity from her athletic identity? I was just going to simply say, this is one of the things Aaron and I deal with. As parents, are you living vicariously through your kids? Then, because this is going to derail real fast. I would suggest, find something else to focus a little attention on. Maybe it's another hobby, maybe it's another outlet. But I'm not the expert here. I'm going to turn it over to Craig. But this is something that we deal with a lot, Craig. And I'm going to kind of encompass that in there. How do you deal with parents that live vicariously through their kids in addition to this question?
Yeah, good question. Again, slowly trying to sort out, okay, well, it's going to depend, again, on the person, the family, what their expectations and goals are. But really, ultimately, it's trying to sort out and get underneath the surface of, like, what do you actually want out of your kid's experience? What do you hope for? And do you kind of understand, are you aware of, like, what level of pressure you're putting on your kid? And is this even enjoyable for you, that you're hinging kind of everything based on the outcome of their performance or just the experience in general? So really trying to get back to the roots, taking a pause and thinking about, okay, well, what is this actually getting? What are the payoffs of this approach? What are we getting from this? And, how do we start to think about building interest, hobbies, like you mentioned, outside of sport, whether it is just taking a pause, taking a weekend off, exhibiting some toughness there of being able to rest and step away for a minute. So it starts with that foundation as to like, what do I actually want? Because I feel like as parents, the instinct is we want the best for our kids, obviously, but the way we're approaching that might not be the most effective, the types of pressure and expectations you set upon them. So it's really getting back to the roots as to what do we actually want.
Awesome. Awesome. Team, we've just closed in on our 15 minutes, but the questions keep coming in and I'm going to keep it going. Aaron, Craig, are you okay for if we field a few more questions?
Of course.
Okay, cool. Let's do it. This is a great question. This is something that Aaron and I deal with a lot. Craig, I would love to get your insight. I'm a senior in my athletic career is ending soon. I'm not going pro, and honestly, I'm terrified because I don't know who I am without sports. How do athletes retire, whether it's after college or after the pros? How does this figure into their identity, and what does that transition actually look like?
Yep. So again, it's a major aspect of sport because again, unless you're 95 and still playing golf, your sport is in all likelihood going to end at some point,
Right.
Whether you did plan for it or not. We know just through research that the more proactive you are in planning for your eventual transition out of sport, the smoother process it'll be. Unfortunately, a lot of athletes, humans in general, don't like to think about the future. They're so mono-focused on what's going on right now. So really, my mission is to proactively, train athletes to think about, okay, their identities outside of sport, their interests, their strengths, so that when the time eventually comes, they can hopefully have a meaningful and successful transition. Also, another thing to note is really the importance of a support network, whether it is from family, coaches, friends, community members. I think that's also a really massive pillar of having a successful transition out of sport. So again, it's complex. It's definitely challenging. It's going to look different for everyone, but ultimately, the more we can have conversations about identity and strengths outside of sport, and maybe it's just repositioning your purpose in sport, whether you return as a coach or a trainer, but thinking about it and planning ahead is ultimately going to help you successfully navigate that tough transition.
Awesome. Hey, Craig, my name's Daryl. I'm a D2 football player in a small school in Texas. I went to college mostly for academics, but I still enjoy playing football. Here's my question. I perform amazing in practice, but terrible in games. The second I know it matters, quote unquote, it matters, I choke. My coach keeps saying it's all mental, but that doesn't help me. What is the actual mindset difference between practice and competition, and how do I perform better under pressure?
Another loaded question. I wish there was a
right
kind of one size fits all solution to this, but it's complex because again, your brain unfortunately knows the difference between practice and a match or a game in football. And there's something at stake when you're playing in a game. There's something. There's an outcome, there's a loss, there's your identity on the line, how people perceive you, fear of public opinion. So your brain knows it's trying to protect you. It's again, understanding how the mind works, understanding how your brain works, and really trying to still build processes that work for you of noticing how your body's feeling, being open to those feelings and recognizing that I might not feel my best. I might have negative thoughts. Even with that, I can still have these thoughts. I can have these feelings of discomfort and focus and perform. So it's not a one or the other, like, oh, I can't perform well if I'm not feeling great or if I'm having negative thoughts, but it's more so I can have these thoughts and still focus and still perform. And it starts with getting to know what works for you. Again, a couple of things, just really building that mindfulness muscle, this trainable skill of paying better attention. So it starts with that and recognizing what's going to work for you. So again, it's complex. It's not going to be solved overnight, but working with the coach and training your mind and training your awareness can ultimately help you manage that discomfort in a helpful way.
Awesome. Another question from a parent, and she wrote, "Just a mom." I think Aaron will argue with you on that one. Just a mom. The things that you go through is quite challenging. Craig, how do we praise our son in the way that builds a growth mindset? What should we say after games, after practices? We don't want to praise outcomes, but we also don't want to ignore his success. What's the right language or verbiage?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be effort based. So things that are in the athlete's control. Again, thinking about the process, thinking about, okay, what were some highlights? What were some things you did well? And more importantly, like what were some characteristics you displayed when something went poorly or something didn't go the way you anticipated? How did you respond? And what was that effort like? What was the body language like? So thinking about those qualities and attributes that we have a bit more control over and praising more so this effort versus, oh, that's great, you won or you scored 30 points. That's not as helpful as focusing on this effort or the hustle or the way you treat your teammates. So thinking
Sure.
about those more qualities and attributes.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'll chime in here too a little bit as just a mom. Is, the
I
other
knew
thing
you
I
were going to
just
jump in.
offer as a mom is just be curious. Like, I think the one thing we could do more of as parents is ask a lot more questions and a lot less telling, trying to understand how do they feel. I think sometimes, for parents, I think I know how my kids feel. I'm not them, so I don't know exactly how they feel. So I think also getting very curious about where is your student athlete at? How are they thinking? How are they feeling? And remaining neutral. You don't need to agree or disagree with anything. Just be curious and listen. And guess what? You actually don't need to solve anything for them. They're going to solve it on their own. You're just there to be a guide. So that would be my 2 cents as a mom, is just get curious, stay curious, and ask a lot of questions.
Just a mom, the answer is blueprintbluechip.com. That's a blanket answer to everything, right, Aaron?
That's right.
Yeah, Craig, we're worried that youth sport. This is a good one because we battle. And then I'm gonna add on to this, Craig. We're worried that youth sports are making our son too resilient in a bad way. He's become emotionally numb because he's had to deal with so much failure and pressure so young. In school, he plays baseball for the high school team, and then he plays club sports on the off season. How do we protect his emotional health while he's still building mental toughness?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think again it starts with really understanding, like, okay, as someone who's in these positions early on, where the task is too demanding, the challenge is too high, how do we as parents and coaches kind of turn down the notch and think about lower level of play or a different sport, and helping them understand, like, okay, yeah, this sport might have not been for you, but again, we're flexible, we can change and we can find something different. So it's about finding that balance, as tough as it is to have a challenge, yes, but nothing to the point where it's overwhelming and really affecting his emotional well-being. So I would start there of finding the right amount of challenge, the purposeful challenge, not where it's too overwhelming, and going from there. So being flexible and trying and experimenting with either different leagues, different sports, different, county games, tournaments, whatever it might be, and then going from there. But it's about finding kind of that right amount of challenge and having them understand that, like, yeah, things are going to be tough at times, but we're also flexible and find different routes for you to make the most of it and to utilize your strengths.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Team, we're going to be wrapping it up here shortly. I've got time for 2 more questions. They keep coming through. So here's a really good one. We're trying not to pressure our daughter, but she puts so much pressure on herself. She's harder on herself than we ever could be. How do we help her manage internal pressure when it's not coming from us?
Yeah, good question there too. Definitely with the pressure and the expectations that athletes tend to put on themselves, can really, again, burden their level of performance, can put on too much stress. Again, a lot of times they're weighing their self-worth, their identity on these outcomes. If I don't perform well, then who am I? Or if I don't make this team, then, how does that affect me as a human? So it's really sitting down with them and really having them understand, like, yes, we want you to pursue these goals and to pursue challenge in your sport, but also, like, at the end of the day, you are so much more than your sport. As easy as that is to say, but really helping them recognize, like, it's just one aspect of you. You have so many more strengths, and helping illuminate that, perhaps by encouraging different activities that they can participate in, having different leadership roles, extracurriculars. So kind of keeping the focus on their sport, obviously, but also making room for other sources of meaning and interest for them.
Awesome. This was one of the very first questions that came in, and I really wanted to save it to close us out because I think it's something that every coach, every athlete, and every parent deals with. Craig, our son is constantly comparing himself to his teammates, and it's destroying him. He's on social media looking at recruiting rankings, watching highlight reels, obsessing over other people's success. How do we help him stop comparing when comparison is literally everywhere in youth sports?
Great question. Yeah, the systems, it's tough now when everything is in front of your face, whether it's on social media, whether it is just checking scores. Everything's so accessible. You can go look up any kid and watch highlights, and Instagram kids are posting, "Oh, thank you for this offer," everything. So it's definitely a concern, social media in general. I mean, we could spend days talking about it, but ultimately it's again, like, how do we kind of shut that off and understand, like, this is really helpful for me to think about what Billy's getting, recruited for. Again, it's about running your own race, setting, again, those own standards of what can I actually control. I don't have any, ownership over whether a coach offers my buddy a scholarship or not. It's thinking about, okay, well, what can I actually manage? What are those mindsets, and how do I treat myself with a bit more compassion? Again, I'm always going to be a proponent for this inner coaching of how we treat ourselves, because beating yourself up, expressing jealousy, maybe anxiety with what's going on social media, I would argue more than likely isn't helpful. So thinking about how we can treat ourselves a bit more kindly, pay attention to those stories our mind presents, and turn towards, like, again, those standards. I'm always going to turn towards those values of thinking about what do we actually own, and how do I continue to run my own race and focus on myself getting better each day.
Awesome. Team, the questions keep coming in. And before we let Craig go, and before I let you get back to your day, Craig, where can people get a hold of you, whether that's an email, a website, or your social media handles?
Yeah, good question. I think the best place just to look up my name on LinkedIn. Let's connect. Let's have a conversation. I'm always curious to learn from others. So really, I would start with LinkedIn with my name, and just shoot me a message, and I'd be more than happy to chat further. So I'll probably leave it with that.
Okay. Craig, if you could give these athletes or families one or two quick hacks to get mentally prepared for a performance or a game, what would it be? I mean, we know about spending time in the gym. We know about watching film. We know about practicing your swing, whether it's golf or tennis. But what can these young athletes do mentally, one or two quick hacks to prepare them for performance?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, often with the mental performance, and I think just performance general too, like, there often are no quick hacks. But I think something that's helpful is, I think Lou Holtz came up with, it's this idea of win. So WIN, what's important now. So helping you kind of with that mindset shift of what's important now. If I just struck out, or if I just hit a home run, like, let's get to the plate now, and what's important now. It's my focus on this pitch and this timing. So I think that's a good little reset. And then thinking prior to the round, like, what do I want to try differently today? What's something I can challenge myself with? So just that reflective process of thinking about, okay, well, how can I maybe change my tactics or change my mindset, and have a little self-reflective exercise prior, can open up new possibilities and open up, who knows, new discoveries.
Awesome. Craig, Aaron, team, this was our first episode of 15 Minutes of Fame, and it turned into a 2 scoops. You got 30 minutes for the price.
There you go. Double scoop, double order.
Yeah. So that's
Mastery.
really awesome. That we maybe we should move it to Tuesday and call it 2 for Tuesday, right? Something like that.
I like it.
Listen, team, keep the questions coming in, and Aaron, myself, and Craig are an incredible resource for you to move forward in your endeavors. One thing I like to stress is don't reinvent the wheel. All three of us have been there. I often tell my athletes, I've been 18, I've been 16, I've been 20, you haven't been 55. So learn from us, and we don't have all the answers, but we can guide you in the right direction. And that's one of the things Aaron and I do is if we don't have the answers, we make sure that we partner with somebody like Craig Bueller who can have the answers. So team, thank you so much. Craig, Aaron, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Guys.
Thanks, you guys.